On the upper side, I got another box going downtown. Man, you can see all the salt in the road. Now you guys know why I don't use my Honda XR in the winter. Well, another big reason that I don't use the Honda XR was originally when I put the heated grips on my Honda XR, I noticed the stator was a little weak for it. But once I changed the headlight to an LED, everything was fine on the XR. So that was one less reason. But one of the biggest reasons that I don't use the XR is this right here, salt. I don't want to subject the bike to that, because I've subjected the KLR to a lot of salt from the road, and it's pretty bad, you know. So I try not to expose the Honda to that. I mean, I enjoy riding the Honda because it's a lighter bike for me. I like something light like that in the city. It's real nice to drive something like that. But the problem is the Honda don't have the fairings here like this. This in the deep winter here in January and February. This will save you. You know, it really keeps the wind off of you. KLR is just a bigger bike. You know, bigger gas tank, less fueling. The heat, get the heat build up here when you're sitting at traffic lights. It's just something that I have discovered to be a really good winter bike. Like here, my legs are behind the fairings actually, if you look at it. So when you're tucked in here, you're not getting the wind on your knees or anything. So it's a really good winter bike, but the Honda XR is a really reliable bike. You know, like in the spring, summer, and falls, I use that Honda because that Honda has very little maintenance, easy to adjust the valves. I mean, I could do it like in an hour, you know. Whereas doing the valves on a KLR, you're talking about a serious job. It's not a simple job at all on a KLR. Valve job on this bike is quite involved. I mean, it's not something you can do on the side of the road. Absolutely not in a dirt parking lot or something like that up in Harlem. No, there's no way. I mean, you got to take all this stuff off. You got to take the tank off. I mean, you have to take the tank off too to adjust the valves on the XR. But one of the things that is very clear about this bike is that if you're doing the valves, you need to measure them, and then you'll have to see what you're going to need. If you need sorry about that. If my mic is so close to my nose, it's like ridiculous. You guys got to listen to this all the time. I'm so sorry. But anyway, you do the valves on this bike, you need to measure them, see if they're in spec or not, and then if they're not, you can't do any adjustment. You're going to have to get the shims to put in there, which now you've taken the whole head off. You've got your cam taken apart, you got everything all taken apart, and then you've got to figure out how to measure it, get the right shims for it. It's not an easy task. You know, it's a big undertaking, and you got to deal with all that, and doing that on the side of the road, it's just not going to happen. You know, you can't do it. There's no way. Yeah, I mean, trying to deal with that would be near to impossible on the KLR, on the side of the road. It's just not something you could deal with. Whereas the XR, I can do everything I need. It's not liquid cooled, so it's a nice bike to just, you know, cruise around the city doing service calls. It's a lot less maintenance, in my opinion, than the KLR. But then again, I like beat this KLR up the whole winter with salt and crap, and like when I change the tires before I put it back on the road, I gotta like freaking beat the axle out to get. It's every time I grease it up, you know, properly, the way you're supposed to, and it gives me trouble with the axle coming out because it's you know, it's fucked up. Like, it must be from all the salt in the road. And I noticed like calipers, like I gotta change my rear brake disc because the caliper got frozen and wore down the rear disc really bad, you know, like I have to change. That's the first thing I gotta change, but I'm not gonna change any of that now because it's too cold. Way too cold to be messing with that. And I'm not sure what the salt does to suspension and all that stuff. It must be a lot of things. It must fuck up shit bad. I think that's what happened to my choke cable. Kept getting salt in it, and it just fucked it all up. But like the throttle is sealed up really well in this KLR, if you look at it. But the choke was not. It was just completely exposed. But as far as like reliability, though, no doubt. I mean, the KLR is really reliable. If you're looking for a bike that you're gonna have to do some work on, you know, going around doing whatever it is you got to do, even oil fields and fucking Midwest, whatever it is you got to do, this bike will do it. Put the right tires on it and you'll be set. I mean, this bike doesn't give you no trouble at all. And neither does the XR. But the problem is the XR has a very small gas tank, which I don't want to upgrade, but I would love to hear from other riders that have XRs. You know, have you upgraded the gas tank to a 5.8 gallon? Because that would be the only one that would really make sense, would be to put a 5.8 gallon A Cerberus. I don't think it would. I don't think any of those other Clark 4 gallon just doesn't make sense. None of those make sense because you're not achieving the fuel range that you're looking for. So yeah, a Clark wouldn't make sense. A Cerberus 5.8 gallon, yeah, that would make sense to me on the XR. But I just wonder if it changes the dynamics of the bike because fuel is heavy, you know. So I noticed with my XR, the way it rides, it's like riding a motorized, mountain bike. It's fun. You don't get the commanding presence though that you do with a KLR. In New York, people respond to a commanding presence. You know, they don't respond to much more than that. I mean, much less than that. It's got to be a commanding presence. that's what they respond to. Like just now, that limo, he moved over because he realized I'm going straight. I'm not. He's going right. I'm going straight. You know, if I was in the XR, they don't move over. You know, because but when I changed the exhaust, it made it a little bit better. But it just doesn't have that commanding presence that the KLR has that New Yorkers respond to. Like this cabbie, he just didn't come over because he sees like he hears like a deep exhaust, a big 650, a light. You know, they respond to that. You know, that's their first instinct is I'm not coming over on that because I don't know what's going to hit me. You know, like what's going to fuck up my car. And you know, maybe after a bit they realize it's a motorcycle and they'll come over on you. But for the most part, they're not coming over on somebody on a KLR. The XR, when it had the stock exhaust, it came right over on me all the time. I was getting cut off all the time, and I was like, damn, what's going on here? So I put the same exhaust legs on there, and it really helped a lot. But I did not take the silencer tip out because, you know, that XR is my spring, summer, fall bike, and I like driving it around. You know, like I got my dirt helmet. It's wide open. I like that I don't have to deal with the loud exhaust sound, you know, bothering me. Because, you know, like loud exhaust definitely bothers the rider too. It's not just people around you, it's also you. You know, you're driving and you hear that exhaust all the time. And it will eventually take a toll on your patience, you know. You'll notice your driving tactics will be different. Drive a little bit more aggressively, stuff like that. Things happen, you know, when you have a loud exhaust. It changes your driving techniques because you're in a little bit of a more bad mood all the time listening to the exhaust. So that's why I didn't do it. Because in the summertime, I'm driving with the dirt helmet. I'm wide open. Every little sound I hear. So I got the silencer tip in. It sounds pretty good to me. Summer, people tend to hear a little bit better. Winter, everybody's closed up tight. They got the heater blasting. They don't really hear anything. You got to have a loud exhaust. It's a must. Absolute must in New York. Just to prevent people coming over on you. And you need a bright LED light because, you know, like if someone is sitting on a corner on a two-way street and they're about to pop a U-turn, when they hear you coming and see you coming, they're not gonna. Oh, damn, that was a bad one. Whew. I didn't see that till the last second. When they hear and see you coming, they won't come over on you. This is a lot of salt on the road. Woof, man. I would feel so bad if it was my XR. But I do feel bad for this KLR too. I don't like to see that, but you know, there's another rider, Rich from Hawaii. He just bought a 2022 KLR, and he loves it. I think it's great, man. I think those new KLRs are the way to go, man. You got the upgraded features, fuel injection, fuel gauge, a lot of different things. You know, they improved upon the rear subframe, which would be awesome for me, and they improved upon the doohickey, supposedly. Just all the little things, you know, that you don't have to deal with. It's nice. It's really nice to see that. I think Kawasaki did a great job, and they didn't change the price too much. I mean, the updated KLR without the ABS is the same price. So that's pretty awesome. But I think Rich Rich comes across as a guy that probably could afford either bike. He could probably afford either, you know, a nice bike. At least he comes across that way. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying he comes across as somebody who could probably afford, you know, something even better than a KLR. But he went for the KLR for reliability, which I think is interesting, you know, because originally when I moved back to New York, I was a little tight on funds, so I went with a KLR because of cost. And a lot of people go with KLR because of price. That's why I went with it, you know, when I first moved back to New York from Manila. So that was my reason. But there's probably a lot of people that go for this bike because of it's ease of use, reliability. You don't have to worry about ordering a lot of parts for it and things. The only thing you got to worry about is those valves, and you can drive the shit out of it anyway. I mean, you can wait. On my old Gen 1 KLR, I drove the shit out of it until, to be honest, I hate to say this, I rode it to 30,000 miles and I never even looked at the valves. So you can do that with a KLR. You can drive the shit out of it until you start having hard start problems, which I never encountered, but on my Gen 1. But you could drive it until you start noticing issues. There's just blow a valve, you know. And that's not a huge big deal either. If you don't want to deal with cracking the engine open and getting shims and all that shit. I mean, it's totally doable. The only problem is, you know, if you do it like that, it's going to be more expensive for you. If you're not capable to handle a job like that, it's going to be more expensive because somebody's going to have to reseat the valve and all that stuff. But if you know how to do that in your garage, you know, it's not a big job. You just have to take the head off, pull the valve out.